Shankar. எங்கிருக்கு? ஓ, யார்கிட்ட இருக்கு? சரிங்க, சீக்கிரம் எடுத்துன்னு வந்துடுங்க. Three more missing, so I'm waiting for the connector. Okay, so yeah. What? No. I'm okay. Firstly, I want as many people. Okay, there are three more people missing, but whether they'll show or not, I don't know. But right now, I'm waiting for the connector. Well, while we are at it, do you have any grave concerns about the state of affairs? I mean the course, but matters of life is okay too, and to the extent that you can help. Yeah, I'm kidding.
Your voice was kind of, I couldn't figure out the topics which were actually the online classes and I was attending.
So the recorded video, the audio is not very clear.
I didn't check for the recorded one for which I was attending. They were attending. The two classes which I attended online. Devananda's voice was pretty clear. Your voice has a lot of echo, so I don't know whether somebody else is doing the same or not. I just wanted to get the reference because there might be a case where someone else is attending it.
Oh, while you were attending it remotely online, then my voice is not clear. Okay.
And also suppose some student is asking some question, is completely not audible.
Yeah, that I can understand. In my case, since I'm here, I usually with Diganta, I go around, taking the mic to them. So maybe then you should do that. Because that, on the recording, it won't come. But this thing, well, I'll see. I'll check with Shankar to see if maybe my mic position is wrong. Okay, it's not correct.
Because of the echo of this probably because of this reason. Actually, it's not like completely incomprehensible.
But you have to strain your ear.
Yes.
Huh?
It's not as easy as attending offline classes.
Maybe we can increase the volume of those portions where you talk and fix it in post.
This conflict because
But how do you do that?
Use your software to suppose for the recorded videos which are already there in the Excel sheet, which you.
Yeah, but she's saying the problem is not the volume, but rather the echo.
Oh.
Even the ரொம்ப echo இருக்கும் onlineல. I mean, have you checked the recorded thing?
I haven't checked the record.
Yeah, I mean, that won't help. I know if you're attending online.
For that two classes, I haven't checked the recordings. Does that have any content?
ரொம்ப echo இருக்குன்றா. Well, I also check. Guhan, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Am I audible? Hello? Hello? Hello, sir?
Hello. So you think the hello? Gohan, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, but your voice is a bit faint compared to before.
Well, he's not responding.
Sir, are you able to hear me?
எக்கோ வருதுன்றாங்க எப்படி ப்ரிவென்ட் பண்றது தெரியுமா? இருக்கக்கூடாது இல்ல இப்போ 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 இல்ல இப்போ ஐயோ இதே வந்துச்சு. ஹலோ இல்ல ஆன் ஆகல. ஹலோ hello hello. Maybe what I'll do is I'll keep it close to my lips. See, but if I keep close to my lips every time I breathe, it's this puff, puff, puff kind of thing. That's why I kind of make it, move it farther. That's okay. Okay. Everyone is here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Jessica is missing. Okay, you two are special people. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Jessica is missing, but that's okay. Hello? Hello? இல்ல இருக்காருதா? ஓகே பார்க்கலாம். என்ன ஸ்கிரீன் ஷேர் ஆகலைன்றீங்களா? இதுதானே கரெக்ட் தான் இது. என்ன இருக்கு? புரியல எனக்கு. எதுக்காக நீங்க ஷேர் ஆகலைன்றீங்க? தெரியல. ரெண்டு லாகின் இருக்குன்னு சொல்றீங்களா? அதனால என்ன? இப்போ ஷேரிங் நீங்க ஒரு கார் இல்லைன்னு சொல்றீங்களே, எப்படி எதை வச்சு சொல்றீங்க? எங்க வரும்? எனக்கு தெரியல அவரு இது ஒன்றும் சொல்லல. Guhan, are you there?
Yes, sir, I'm there. Am I audible? Sir, are you able to hear me?
கொஞ்சம் இருங்க, அவர் என்ன சொல்லலாம். I guess he does. I mean, I have to assume.
Sir, am I audible?
Okay, so let me start. So we saw this example last time, correct? So we were discussing loop invariance. So, and I proposed several different predicates that can serve as loop invariance at this for that particular loop, and we saw that and the choice of that will the choice of which one you will use will depend on whether what kind of post condition that you want to verify. That thing, whatever you choose, has to be strong enough that along with the negation of the loop entry condition should be able to prove that should able to prove. And also, of course, it has to include all the states characterized by the predicate at the entry of the loop. And then we also saw what was the strongest one? Yeah, so the post, what was needed, yes. So this was the strongest invariant that includes precisely the set of all states and no more than that, which is needed to prove this. Now, these predicates are also loop invariants, but they are weaker than that. In that, it includes all the states that that you can possibly get to in any of the iterations, but more than what the actual states that are reachable during any one of the iterations. Now, I want to show, so that in that sense, a loop invariant can be considered as an abstraction. I kind of briefly mentioned it, and that's what I want to make it more precise. So this is the code of the program. So for example, consider this one. I will move it up. Yeah, here. What I'm doing is I'm replacing, see, this is not exactly C code. Okay, so this has things like assume and assert. Assert we've already seen, and we've also seen assume to specify the precondition. So, but here I'm using assume in a slightly different way to constrain the values of my program variables at any point during the thing. What I've done here is replaced the while loop with an assume statement. Okay, so this code is the same initialization code. So you should read this as I assign to X and I whatever non-deterministically, okay, whatever value, it can take any value that satisfies this predicate. Okay, so this is a loop invariant there. So even x, for example, was a loop invariant. So that is so of course I is equal to star here. I use it to denote that I can take arbitrary values, and obviously I does not take arbitrary values when it is there. So that's why, in that sense, this is an abstraction, because anytime you replace and this is abstraction of a loop because it is hiding certain details as to how you get to those states as being hidden. So that is one aspect of abstraction, but it is also an over approximation, okay, which means that it includes all the states whenever it contains more behaviors than what is actually permissible, okay? And it is true, isn't it? Because as far as the values of x and I are concerned, this is more permissive, okay? So that's why it is over approximation. Now, that's what I've done here. And once again, after that, I assume here, constrain it that to signify the condition that, a condition under which you will exit the loop. And after that, I assert, okay? So this program as a whole, when compared to the previous thing where the loop is replaced by a predicate here, so loop invariant, which captures is an over approximation, because if you look at the input output behavior of this program when compared to the other one, this is more permissive, okay? So in that sense, it's over approximation, but it is a sound over approximation in the sense it does not preclude any. It includes all the permissible states and something more. Now, this is good enough for you to prove this particular condition. That is the use of over approximation. Sometimes by throwing in, just like in proofs, sometimes it is easier to generalize the theorem that you want to prove, and the proof will become easier. Sometimes it is easier to discover a weaker loop invariant. If that is adequate, that is strong enough to prove your property, then the discovery of loop invariant, which at least until now, I'm saying that one has to come up with manually in order to deal, in order to complete the proof, okay? So, for example, this particular predicate is too weak to prove this post condition, correct? Because it doesn't say anything about, it says, only asserts that even x is true, and therefore x is equal to 20, you will not be able to prove. So what is the thing that you need? What is the loop invariant that you need to prove it? Anyone? What can I already had it in the previous slide. The correct. Okay, x is equal to 2i will be so let's see, if x is equal to 2i, let's check, okay? If x is equal to 2i, that is certainly a loop invariant, okay? And upon the negation, yes, I is equal to 10, you will be able to get it. That's exactly correct. So you require the strongest loop invariant in this case to prove that. Okay, what else did I want to? Okay, so the question that I want to raise, so this is the notion of over approximation. Then you will see that being used very, to simplify. Often you want to use over approximation. The way you construct the over approximation is very much dependent on various things. One of the prime thing is you have to fine tune it relative to the property that you want to verify. Now, a dual notion is under approximation. Okay, you could use, I mean, under approximation, like it says, if it is any characterization of the behavior where it only includes a subset of the actual behavior. So why would why would an under approximation be useful, okay, in verification? Now you can see that if hello. Well, I don't know if the internet, I guess the internet is, okay, when would an under approximation be useful? That is the question, okay? For example, suppose you, what kind of under approximation is useful? So for example, instead of capturing all the behaviors for all iterations, suppose I told you the one way you could kind of get a thing is unwind the loop a certain number of times, not the actual number of times that that it would take, that would take for all values of inputs. Then if you prove that is an example of an under approximation, okay, where it doesn't capture all the behaviors, but certainly it captures a subset of the actual behavior. Now for that, if it's still, of course, if using that under approximation, if that will be useful only when, if the post condition, even for an under approximation gets violated, then you know that there's an error. Now, if with an under approximation, if you prove it, then doesn't mean that you've proven for all values. So in that sense, under approximation is also useful as a bug hunting tool. The extreme case of use of under approximation is testing by simulation on specific inputs. It is an extreme case of under approximation, right? Because you're capturing the behavior for a specific inputs. Okay, so that's what testing is involved in. You could use a similar thing. Another kind of under approximation that is useful is something that so you remember that you had the proof, the backward proof of swap, where you started with the post condition and you computed the weakest precondition by using the Hoare logic in the in one version of the Hoare logic. Now, so there the Hoare logic was defined, the inference rules were defined to compute the weakest precondition. Okay, now you could, instead of when it is very hard to compute the weakest precondition, you could take an under approximation of that, okay? Which means that it will be not the weakest one, but a little bit stronger than that one, if that is easier to compute. Then if you propagate that, then what you get here is an under approximation of the thing. And then if your precondition is still included in this under approximation, then you know that you're verified, okay? So, then it would serve the thing. Or what you can do is, instead of using the post condition to propagate it backwards using weak condition, you could take the negation, say, for example, okay? And then if you could take that and you can compute an approximation even for that, if there is an intersection of that and this, then you've found something that will take you to the negation of the thing. Therefore, that could be a bug. Okay, so there are various ways that you could use under approximation as well. So that's the point that I wanted to make. Okay. So with that, what I want to do is to move to. I thought I'd start with papers. What? Now, which one are you referring to? This? Yes, in this? Wouldn't the value of x be? No, you start with 0 each time. So there is I is equal to 9. Okay. No, when I is 9, when I is 9, you would have incremented it by, x would be 18, correct? But you would go once more, because when I is equal to 9, you will enter once more. Yeah, could be. No. So 0 each time. So the first iteration will be for 0. Okay. So then it will be 2. So at that point, it will be 2. Yeah, x is incremented before your I is incremented. That's okay. So I think x is equal to 20 is correct. Okay. Correct. Yeah. Yeah, 0 through 9, there'll be 10 times that it will be executed, and therefore x will be incremented 10 times. Each time by 2, and therefore it will take x is equal to 20. Yeah. Okay, so let me, so before I move to discussing more about abstractions and so on, I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to cover the, have a brief discussion about the paper assignment so that I don't know why it gets, maybe, no. Command? Oh, I see. Okay, so what I've done is I have, see the papers, there were two lists that I had published, okay? One in the, as part of the course description, and I had a separate list. What I've done is I have categorized most of the papers in the two lists under these broad topics, okay? Which kind of something that I wanted to cover, okay? Some of which we will cover. So my aim is to cover as many of those topics, okay, in the course. So that's how I wanted to plan the assignments so that as many of the topics will be covered either through lectures that are given by us, that is the instructors, or by you towards the end, middle to end of the term. So these are the broad topics. So there are certain what I call as basic topics. These introduce you to the tools that we certainly want you to get acquainted with. Okay. Now, there are papers associated with these tools as well, papers that describe the algorithm, okay, and the method behind the verification method that is used, which is described in the paper. So these will be covered, and each of them will have tools. So now, those things I plan that we will, between myself, Madhukar, and Diganta, we will cover that, okay? This will include both certain specialized abstraction techniques that are specialized for verifying neural networks, as well as decision procedures, some SAT solving decision procedures that are used. That is what these things are meant for. Now, there's also a tool called Alpha Beta Crown, which is the best tool as presently in terms of it wins a lot of competition. There is some competitions that these tools get entered in, and there are benchmarks as per the thing. Now this one, Alpha Beta Crown, is a bit more advanced than the tool called DPoly, and I have not assigned anybody for that. Okay, maybe that is something that I'd like to be covered, but let's see. So that I have not assigned it yet. Now the other things, the other category is like more advanced abstraction techniques, and there is a associated technique called counterexample. Whenever an abstraction becomes too weak, there are techniques where to strengthen the abstraction based on the spurious counterexample that you get. Okay, I showed you that one impact of using an over approximation is that you will be getting, when something fails to verify, that doesn't mean that there is a bug, because your inductive invariant could be too weak. Therefore, you'll have to strengthen it to do it. So how you do that is an interesting question, and that is what there's a method called SIGA. So these are things. Now here, based on, since I know the in advance the interest of some of the people that I've already worked with, so I've based on their interest, I have pre-assigned to them. Now for that is the S1 through S5. There are 7 people in the course. So for Jessica and Arpan, based on their interest, I have assigned, and since they also have taken the model checking course, the software verification course, so keeping that in mind, I've advanced a little bit, papers that are a bit more advanced, okay, for them. S1 through S5 are the rest of the 5 people who are registered for the course. There are totally 7 people registered for the course. So there I have not assigned the 5 people to specific papers, but based on your interest and what you want to do, you could take a look at, okay, for each of the people here, for example, I have, in this category, I've also listed the papers, okay? There are 2 lists, as you know. One is the list that is right. Oh goodness, why doesn't it? For some reason it does not. This is one list that appears along with this thing. So when I and then there is the other list, okay. For that I have identified with a D, okay, capital D, because that list was produced by the Gantam, okay. So I've listed those papers as well. So what I suggest is, before you you have some choice about thing. You could take a look at, maybe read the abstract and the introduction, and you could make, if you have a strong preference for a particular topic in a paper, you could then come back, and then on a first come first served basis that I will do, you can discuss and then decide. Okay, the 2 that for Sayantan you volunteered to do, so I have assigned you 1, okay, and the other have I spelled your name correctly? Yeah, okay. Huh? Yeah, okay. So we can once again discuss, okay, what the thing is. Now, what are the categories? Once again, I said there are some abstraction, methods that are specifically geared towards verifying, some cases, general neural networks, and some same RNN stands for recurrent neural networks, okay, which neural networks with some memory. The other class is just for DNN, different kinds of properties that you want to verify. That's another axis, okay? How do you, if there are some specialized techniques, there are, like I said, there are safety properties, robustness properties, and there are other properties that try to explain why neural networks behave in a certain way. So these are papers pertaining to these kinds of various different kinds of properties that you can verify. Now, this is backdoor attack is pertaining to checking there's no adversarial attack that you can do. This is a little bit related to security of neural networks. And then there is this reinforcement learning, either verifying safety properties of reinforcement learning models, or papers on using reinforcement learning to specific applications. In this case, since Arpan was interested in distributed systems, I have assigned some papers for that. And so looking at application would be useful. And that is one thing that, we will look into. The other category is verifying different variants of DNN. Like I said, there are recurrent neural networks, there's convolutional neural networks, this binarized neural network where the output and the values at the various neurons are constrained in a certain way, and you could, certain specialized techniques might be useful there. Now, the other category, which I have not listed any papers because that is not my priority, is verifying systems where a DNN is a component. Okay, so it could be a control component in with a closed loop system, but that gets into using verification, more advanced verification techniques, and that's why I have not I've deprioritized that thing. So for the 5 people that I've just not made any specific assignment, that I've listed here as S1 through S5, which is outside of Arpan and Jessica. Or if Jessica is not interested, if you want to do CNN, we can do that thing as well. But I suggest that you go through these papers quickly and these broad categories, and discuss with me within maybe the next week or so, because I want you to get started with reading the paper. The first time you read it, probably you will not understand. So between now and the next maybe certainly four lectures, okay, we will be covering. Yeah, like I said, this is one. It's either in this list or in the other list that I have, which in this list. If there is a D with a number followed by number, then it would be in this list. Okay. I think I have already done. Okay. So if you go to the timetable Google Sheet, I believe that I have linked to both of these things. But what I don't, okay, I will certainly share the, this certainly I have, and I had this list. Now I have enhanced this list, okay, beyond what was there in the course description document, which I have, for which I have inserted the link. So I will upload this for this one as well, because it is a couple of papers. that the thing. What I do not have is, I think most of these are available you can get them and download them using Google. But Shaurya, do you think that we should download all these papers and put it in a repository? Okay. Um, yeah, I mean, you can put a link or whatever for the PDF in case that you. So that is the idea. I certainly want to cover alpha beta crown. How we accommodate these papers is something that I'll have to discuss with Diganta, who knows a little bit more about these papers, and we will see either if one of these papers that I've assigned you is quite simple, and we think that okay, maybe you need to to be for the load to be distributed, we might decide to assign an additional paper from there. Yeah, I think I'm sure that when you read it, I'm not sure if you would have covered through this basic lectures and these lectures based on these tools, that the papers may go beyond what is actually covered in class. Okay, and you might need to. That's why I'm saying get started, and then if you don't understand, uh, you know, uh, much of it, you'll have to come talk to us, and maybe there are some references in that paper that you'll have to chase and then read, or we may suggest some supplementary material for you to read. Okay, so I will put a schedule. I think it will be another 4 lectures for us to cover all these basic topics. Okay, that will give you enough time. Okay, now where we are right now. Today is what date? September 12th. Okay, so by middle of certainly October, we should be done. Okay, even before that, there are 8 lectures. I would think 4 to 6 lectures is the most that we will require to cover topics under basic things. There'll be one assignment on the FV basics, whole logic and the thing that I will be giving you. There'll be one more immediately after these tools papers are presented for you to actually use each of these. For example, Reluplex, there is a tool. Both the first two, Marabou, I mean, the first two, A and B, are implemented in a tool called Marabou. Okay, that covers that. And then Deep Poly and Linson, they go together, and there are 2 separate tools, but they can be used together. And then Alpha Beta Crown, okay, which is the fastest and the most, would you say, Shaurya, most widely used tool for DNM? Yeah, okay. And certainly there will be some hands-on exercises that will be part of this assignment 2. I mean, the Z3 I'm considering as assignment 0. The alpha beta crown. Yeah, so that is roughly the idea. I wanted to announce this so that you can get started early on. One. Oh, by the way, okay, this one, there was another paper that Madhukar said he will be sending it to me. So between those 3 things, by the way, this one, now D2, oh, that reminds me, that's good that you asked it. D2 is, there will be, day after tomorrow, there will be, Okay, that D2, I believe that one of the papers, this one, is what I listed. Okay, I suggest that you attend if you can this lecture. Yeah, Supratik, this will be given by Supratik. So he is one of the co-authors, a very good speaker. So you will get, generally, I mean, even whether you choose that particular paper in that topic or which one. See, the model, I believe the model that is used here may not be a DNN model. Okay, this can be, maybe it's a decision tree model or something. I also do not know the details of this one, but nonetheless, this is there'll be a lecture day after tomorrow. So if you have the time, when is that? It is September. I mean, it is September 14th is when it is scheduled. 7 p.m. So I think if you can, please do attend this. I don't know if you are on this. I can forward this thing to you. I don't know if you are on the list, the seminar list that this is targeted towards. I will certainly forward. So any questions? Okay, so there are no questions, then I will move on. Oh, I'm running out of battery. Why? Oh, it's not plugged in. Good. Just much time I have until 5 o'clock. Okay. Or maybe before I do that, briefly, I'll go back. Okay, I'll raise a question if it is. See, the most challenging aspect of verification is dealing with loops. As I said, for straight line programs, you can push whole logic. I mean, it is mechanizable. Okay. The complexity there is because all the inference rules are stated as for, it's a schema for any predicate which is defined as in terms of as a first order formula. You can actually mechanically keep pushing them either backwards or forward, and you will get maybe a humongous predicate, ugly looking humongous predicate, which can always be shipped off. Where the thing is not that automatic is when you deal with loops. Okay, you can use an under approximation and still use it. Otherwise, you will have to somehow magically discover this loop invariant. Now, for DNN verification, simple feed forward, there are no loops. Therefore, in principle, in that sense, it is much easier. But of course, there it is the scale. Okay, you will have a lot of neurons running into millions and so on. So how do you scale them is one thing. Now the question is if these loop invariants can be somehow discovered or synthesized automatically. Okay, and there's been a lot of research. for a number of years to do that. And there are tools to do it. Okay, there are both logic-based tools where they are derived using, especially you could express the synthesis problem, I mean the problem of synthesizing, as a second order problem, in the sense second order. Okay, by the way, when I say first order, I think I've mentioned it. Why is it what we've been seeing is called first order? What is first order about it? Did I mention that? See, what is first order? You saw propositional logic. Now, quantifier, okay, in the first order predicate calculus has two things, okay, different than propositional logic. The domains, the variables range over more sophisticated domains, possibly infinite domains, and they have quantifiers, okay? Now, the restriction in a first order logic is that the quantification is only over first order objects, in the sense over variables ranging over those domains. Once you start quantifying over second order objects, like quantifying over functions on over that, then you're moving into a second order thing, okay? So, you know, if you want to discover a predicate that satisfies certain conditions, okay, a loop invariant satisfies three conditions, right? The initiation condition, the inductiveness condition, and for it to be useful, it has to satisfy the exit condition. Now, this problem is one of discovering a predicate, which is like a map from the domain to a bool, such that certain conditions are. So given a predicate, checking those three conditions are simple. That's a first order problem. Whereas the synthesis problem is one of searching over all predicates, okay? So that's a very hard problem in general. It's in general, it is undecidable. But there are ways of, you know, with some restrictions, it can be automated. One is, if you restrict your invariance over finite domains, okay? It can be arbitrarily complex, okay, finite domains. So you could, then you'll only have finitely many, you know, predicates to search over. Then, okay, then it is decidable. Now, the subject of model checking, okay, is that, okay, if you restrict yourself to certain, you know, certain extension of propositional logic, like what is called temporal propositional logic, okay, so it is more sophisticated than simple propositional logic, but because it builds on top of propositional logic, it is still the domains are all you know, discrete and finite, then it is decidable, okay? It is very complex. It is more complex than NP, okay, it's P space, but it is, that is one, okay? Now, another method that has been used, okay, that may be useful for us since we are dealing with machine learning. This is something that has been applied for in the last 10 years. So they use machine learning to kind of synthesize, to discover approximate, they may not be exact loop invariants, but they're close to a loop invariant, okay? Then once you do that, then you can fix it by checking. That's a quite a popular approach. So there have been, I have not listed that as one of the topics. Now, if there is great desire, if there is a strong desire here by anyone to look into those things, you know, that I can add as well. I'm flexible about that. That is one. Well, sometimes randomized algorithm is, random simulation is also used, okay? Now, whether, see, what is machine learning? I mean, machine learning is, but those randomized algorithms are somewhat constrained by, you have to exploit some pattern, okay, in doing it. So there are certain randomized pseudo-random techniques that exploit some patterns, okay? there is this group in Stanford called Alex. I mean, the head of the group is called Alex Icahn. So he doesn't call his method machine learning, okay? But it's anything that learns something from pattern, but with some randomization. So I wouldn't say. I mean, there some of the people that have worked on are very much like they all exploit some patterns, okay, in the beginning, and then they do examples, non-examples, and then they just in reinforcement learning sometimes are used to steer it towards the thing. So there are some randomized techniques as well, okay, that do so. But there are a whole bunch of techniques, thing. The third one is what I want to introduce you to today, and that is, if you restrict the shape, right now, whole logic, it's not restricting you, it's full first order logic, okay? Now, if you restrict the kind of, the shape of the loop invariance that you want to search for, okay? Even when that predicate, then they have to be finite tree, okay? The domain could be things, like for example, you restrict, you only want to derive invariance that constrain the bounds of your variables, okay, and things like that, okay. So things that are expressible as delta 1 is less than or equal to x, less than or equal to delta 2 for each variable. So then your search is what is the tightest delta 1 and delta 2 that you can get. That is what I mean by restricting the shape, okay? That in turn means there are certain restricted abstract domains. They're not arbitrary predicates, but rather restricted. Then you can actually automate that by, even automate it to such an extent that you don't need even to use Z3-like tools. All these other tools, these logic-based tools, even the one that we have seen, whole logic, at the end of the day, it derives verification conditions, which are shipped off to be checked by Z3 or some kind of, solver tools. But this technique that that's what is called static analysis or abstract interpretation, okay? That doesn't even, it's so automatic that it easily scales, okay, because using Z3 or SAT solving eventually restricts your the size of the formulas that you can actually handle, whereas the abstract interpretation based method scales very well, but it restricts the kind of the shape of your the invariance that you can verify. So if you willing to trade off that, then it is completely automatic and also very efficient. Remember that the deep poly LinSim tool that I mentioned, and to some extent even alpha beta crown, they are they use that principle of abstract interpretation by restricting the domains, and then which in turn means you're restricting the shape of the predicate that you can derive, okay? And that's one of the reasons that it scales, and that's what I'm trying to introduce here. Okay, now I like this tutorial. This is a fairly old tutorial by this guy who is the inventor of this technique, okay? He and his wife, husband and wife pair, they were the original inventor of this technique, and they were also, and the way that they approach is called abstract interpretation. But people who worked in compilers also kind of approached it in a slightly different way, but they had the same ideas, and that's where they use the term static analysis, okay? But there is, but this one is more, formally grounded, and therefore, I use this one now. Besides, of course, this one is a little bit cryptic. Okay, it's good to quickly in one lecture to cover it. It's easier, and that's why I use this. Now, there is a, there is a book called Verified Learning. I don't know if it's published or not. That has a chapter which I will upload. Maybe not the latest version, that an earlier version of that, which I will upload. That has a chapter. There the abstract interpretation is discussed at a fairly high level, so that you get and how exactly how with mainly with in the context of applying it to neural networks. Okay, so those two should be enough for you to get the basic sense. And after Diganta covers deep poly, you should be able to do it. Now, if you take alpha beta crown, one of the papers on alpha beta crown, which is builds on top of deep poly, then that will be sufficient for you to understand. So I will go through some of the slides of this. This has a lot more, and some of the slides here are very technically you need certain technical thing that you may not that I may not cover at once here, but nonetheless, let's go through this. Okay, so here's a program. What does it this you kind of do? So here, okay, the objective is to, and this is how abstract interpretation does, this restricting the shape is still very useful. If your idea is to find out, to check that there is no overflow or underflow, okay? That is, suppose, your thing. Typically, these kinds of methods are used, at least in the software context, to ensure that there are no runtime errors, like no underflow, overflow, no uninitialized access to uninitialized variables, no null dereferencing, buffer overflows, and these kinds of things. Okay, are the typical properties that are verified. Now, if you want to do it, if you want to verify that, then you may be able to restrict that J is bound by a certain, so you can use the intervals, okay, the interval domain, as they call it. Okay, that is, you could do, or sometimes they are, the value of J may be dependent on I. So you may want to use what are called, constraints of the kind I plus or minus J is less than or equal to certain things, and they're usually called octagonal domains. Okay, and more generally, you can have polyhedral domains. Okay, which correspond to the where you have a polyhedral bounding all the values. The idea is to, in whole logic, given arbitrary predicate, you propagate those things, right? And then when you compute a loop invariant, you try to compute whatever is the strongest or the weakest thing, and so on. Whereas here, given that your starting predicate is is of a particular shape that you've chosen, then you try to propagate that. Okay, and that's what is done here. Okay. So for example, so here I'm using a polyhedral domain. Okay, so all the constraints that I get here, starting with the initial constraint, can be expressed as linear inequalities. Okay, over linear expressions with constant coefficients. Okay, so for example, if n naught is greater than or equal to 0, after this you can get this. Okay, now of course this one you can get using the whole rule also. Okay, but the idea here is not to view it that way. So there is this concept of abstract transformers. So you kind of lift each of these statements here to work on this abstract domain. Okay, so you have the set of values described by this predicate. Now, So you then compute the tightest, okay, object in that domain. In this case, it's polyhedra, okay, or there are more number of variables, there are 4 variables here, that will include all the values that you can possibly get, okay, after you do this, okay. So that is how it is done. So what it does is, if you restrict your domain, then you can lift each of the operations, okay, that are involved in all the basic statements, okay, which includes the operators like plus, minus, etc., whatever you have, and then you could start deriving those things in that domain. So yeah, that's okay. So that's how you're deriving. So eventually you get to something which says that J itself is less than N naught, okay, and N naught itself is greater than or equal to 0, and therefore you're not. So the where it gets really tricky is here. Okay, now you know that you're counting down I in the outer loop and counting up the J in the loop. So that's why there is a dependency between those two things, and then deriving these kinds of things that are invariant, even for you to get convinced, it is not, you'll have to think a little bit, and I leave it to you to do it. And these kinds of things abstract interpretation can derive, okay, without actually deriving verification conditions like whole logic does, and then sending it, checking it with the thing. So this is one way. These the condition that is shown here as well as here, they are loop invariants, real loop invariants. They may not be, they're obviously not exact ones, but they are approximate, over approximate. In the sense they're not the strongest one, but they still are the strongest. The strongest. Most of the time, it gives the strongest in that domain. Okay, so here, the polyhedral domain. So, but when it can, it derives the strongest one. But this is completely automatically. And how it does, as I told you, by lifting all these operations from the concrete domain, which in this case are integers or real numbers, to this polyhedral domain, okay? And how it does using this in the loop is challenging and interesting. Okay, so that is something that we'll get to, but I want to give you just the overall idea here, okay? Okay. Okay, in 2-dimension, let's suppose that you have a predicate suppose 2 variables, you have P, 2 variables, X and Y. So these are points in a plane, correct? So what are the values that satisfy this? So these points, okay? Now, what this does is it kind of draws this, okay? A polygon that includes all of them, okay? And that's what, in 2-dimension, a polyhedra is the equivalent of a polygon in multiple dimension, okay? So given the, the tightest fitting, say, just imagine the tightest fitting, you characterize the pre-state as the tightest fitting polygon, okay? Then after you execute that statement, you have to compute the, as best as you can, the as tight fitting polygon. So it may, like in here, it is including these points as well, okay? Which are, there are lots of points in here that are not really legally permissible. Okay, so in that sense, it's an over approximation. It's an over approximation of the actual, if you view it in the concrete domain. Okay, but still it tries to get the tightest possible one in that abstract domain. If all your pre and the post conditions are also with the same shape, then in a lot of cases it is good enough to use this over approximation. Okay, and that is the idea. And the important thing is that it does that by, as I said, lifting all the operations that you use in your program and all the program constructs like if then else, assignment statements, etc., to the abstract domain, which in this case is polyhedral, but you can have interval in various other domains. Yeah, and polyhedra, like I hope you understand. So polyhedra is something like a multi, in higher dimension of your for the polygon, and that corresponds to exactly the object that is defined by as a solution to a set of linear inequalities as an LP problem. So, for example, in LP you could compute that, okay, and that is what it does now. The idea is not to use an LP solver, okay, because even the LP solver is like Z3. So the idea of abstract interpretation is to directly, compute those bounds here, okay. These bounds, okay, which are the corners. It tries to compute them using some algebraic methods, okay, when it builds these what are called abstract transformers. Okay, so I'll take just 5 minutes and I'll have to continue with this. All these are apple pie and motherhood. So we have already abstraction and, I think I'll skip this. Yeah, so the important thing to recognize is there is concrete semantics. Okay, so this is, okay, the next few slides are very intuitive, and so I like them very much, and that's why I want to go through. So generally the behavior. So while in whole logic we have captured the behavior of a program as an input-output, right at the entry point, as a relation, as a predicate relating the state at the entry point to the exit point. Of course, the way, in general, there is a predicate, inter-predicate after every, so there's a state that describes after execution of every instruction, okay? And if there's a loop, there'll be multiple times that the instructions in the body will be executed. So in general, what captures the behavior of a program is a trace, where the T here is the instructions, okay? Each individual basic instructions that is executed, and these things are for various values in the input, in the state, okay? Each here point corresponds to a state that satisfies your input assumption. Okay, this is what is possible behaviors. Okay, I've already said this. Okay, so if you want to solve this verification problem in general, we discussed that it is undecidable, and in some cases it might be decidable. So I want to, and what we are interested in is to check that when you execute certain safety property defines some forbidden zones, okay? They're defined as predicates, either general predicates, or if you're restricting, it could be shaped. So here the red portions are all some things that none of your trace behavior should intersect with. So this is the possible trajectories, and it can be infinite such a possible thing. And this is, and the safety property is also described as a predicate. And now this is an error, okay? If there is even a trace that intersects with that red zone, that's an error. Now, testing and simulation, they enumerate as much as possible each of these traces individually, where verification is intended to capture them symbolically and then deal with all possible. Yeah, each trace is a curve there. Yes. Yeah, this abstract interpretation itself, as I informally said, it constructs an abstract semantics. Okay, but before that, so because it constructs an abstract semantics, as I said, at each point it tries to compute the tightest possible that includes all possible permissible behavior. Okay, and therefore, so you can say that depending upon what domain, abstract domain you use, in this case, say I'm using a polyhedral domain, then something that what your method has to ensure is that all the possible traces are included in this green thing. And of course, if I'm assuming that there are, it computes that abstraction with those holes in there. So this is a good way. I mean, if you could abstract it and compute that and then ensure that it does not intersect with your, that the over approximation of the possible behaviors that it computes in the abstract domain is such that it does not think, then if it computes that over approximation, then you check that it never intersects with this thing, then you're done. I mean, this I've already introduced. This is one way that it can be automated, model checking, by restricting your to finite tree domains. And then whole logic is deductive methods. Okay, so that is not automatic. If you can have, there are tools that can mechanize as much of those things called theorem provers, but it is a very painful task. And static analysis, abstract interpretation, it uses the concept of abstract domains and abstract transformers by lifting all these things. One-time effort, very major effort of lifting all the operations to work on the abstract domain such that each of those operations computes a sound over approximation. That's a major effort. But once you do that, it is completely automatic. Yeah, that's what things. It has to be sound, since it has to include and precise enough such that you won't get false alarms. Okay, so if it is too coarse domain, then you will get lots of false alarm errors. So how do you fine tune this thing is the challenge here. In Hoare logic, if you use a model checking, whenever it works, you know that you get the precise thing. Okay, I'll go till 5 o'clock. So for example, this could be the most abstract. Okay. See, previously I had something, this is the most abstract, sound and precise abstract semantics that you could use. Yeah. Opposite of what you want. Why? Yes. This is more precise, but what I'm saying, I mean, no. Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is this is what, okay, you have to be careful here. Most abstract, yeah. Now the most abstract leap, yeah, this precise is a thing. Okay, if you use, it's more liberal than the previous one, correct? But it's the most abstract. No, I think this is misleading. Okay, so it is not the most precise. Okay, the most precise one will be at each point dot 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 dot. Okay, so that is the most precise, which is what you would get if you were propagating the strongest post condition after every point. Okay, and I have a yes. Okay, so yeah, so you're right. That's a good point. This is the most abstract, uh, that, but it is still not precise enough. Let me put it that way. Okay, anything less precise than that, you are moving into the forbidden zone, and that can cause false alarms. Okay. Now, this is not a sound abstraction. Okay, so because it's an over approximation, not a sound abstraction, because it leaves out. It has to include all the actual behavior. So that's what when an over approximation is sound, it has to be sound. Otherwise, when it says well proved, it is not exactly sound. Okay. Now this is the situation when you have the false alarm case. Okay. It's an over approximation that is too imprecise. Okay. But sometimes this may be unavoidable. Okay. Because if indeed this is what you're doing, at each step you're only not computing the exact set of points that you get, rather than trying to fit it into a particular shape, then this might be unavoidable. And that is one of the issues with static analysis. Okay, so that's why you see static analysis tools supporting all kinds of domains. Okay, and then you will have to fine tune to your application which domain that you actually pick. Okay, so where do I want to stop? Okay, so I just want to show two more pictures and I'll stop. See, what you're doing in Hoare logic is this. Yeah. You're taking at each step, you're pushing, computing, calculating a predicate which exactly is, although I have drawn an ellipsoid here, it exactly characterizes those points. Okay, at each point, that's what you're pushing. Yeah. Now, if you use, say, if you were pushing interval domain, then you see you're doing something like this. It literally has other things. See, there is the upper bound is here, but then it also has some more things. And therefore, and what abstract interpretation or static analysis does is it computes as tightly as possible after each thing something like like this. Now, the real challenge here also, the challenge is how do you get the most precise, even for a straight line? I mean, like assignment statements, if then else, and so on. The loop also is a challenge. Here. Okay, how do you propose that you converge? Okay, so I think what I will do is I'm going to stop here, and I think I will need one more, at least part of one more lectures. Let's spend one more lecture in completing this principles of abstract interpretation, and then we'll move on. Yeah, so that's what I will do next time. Yeah, okay.